This morning, I had the great privilege of talking to Vanya, a double hip replacement patient. She spent years battling with arthritis that was making her hips worse and worse and worse. And it wasn't until she got pregnant with her first son did the pain become all too much. She could barely move. So after going through several doctors, getting several different opinions, one surgeon turned up and took the decision away from her. Apparently, her hips had become like a 70-year-old's, trapped in a 31-year-old's body. It was time to have the replacement. She couldn't pick her son up. She couldn't move how she wanted to. It was time to move past those blockages in her mind that told her she was just too young to have a hip replacement. You will learn so much about anterior hip replacement surgery, a HANA bed, which I didn't know about, and carrying your first child when you've got bad hips. It's a great interview, guys, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's get going.
I was born in Bosnia, immigrated to Croatia when I was 5 because of the war. And then I immigrated from Croatia to America because my parents were 2 different religions. So he went on one side and we went on the other side. And so we came to America as reconnecting families because we were separated during war. And we just kind of landed in Georgia. And when we moved to Florida, my husband and I was super homesick. I lived so I have pictures of like from back in Croatia, and we lived in a home that had it was shot completely up. And my husband's like, and nobody ever fixed that. I said, no, it just sits like that. So yeah. Yep. When my son is currently 6. So when he was 1, I got them done. He barely started walking. It was great. Yes. Well, I didn't get him done at the same time. So I waited for 4 months, and I'm sure you know about the healthcare in the United States. Super tricky, but basically they were buy one, get one free if I got them done within 1 year, like within that same calendar year for the healthcare, right? For the fiscal year. So if I got them done within that year, yes. So I met my deductible, I met my out-of-pocket expenses that I was responsible for, and insurance paid the second one full. Yeah. So I have, I guess I inherited degenerative arthritis that I was not aware of until I started running 5Ks. So I always was very active since I was like a teenager. So I danced a lot in high school, and then I played soccer. Obviously, European in America, what do you do, right? You don't play softball, right? So I played a lot of soccer, so football. Um, and after high school, I was super active. I always did some exercises. It was either HIIT workouts or when I met my husband, or lifting. And then when I met my husband, he was very high into running. And so he's like, I'll train you, come run with me. I said, okay. And so my ability to be able to run 3 miles was like the 5Ks was terrible. I was not able to do it. So he trained me up these big hills because Georgia is super hilly. I'm sure and I swear, lived on the highest hill in Georgia. And so, oh, where was I? So he started to get me trained, and I started running 5Ks with him, and I did really good for a few years. And so because I trained a lot, on very hilly areas, we went to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and we did a 5K there. And it was right before a half marathon because he was running the half marathon the next day, and I agreed to run the 5K the day previous. And that's when I started noticing the pain in my left hip. And there's even a picture on one of my Instagram posts where you can see me holding my hip. And so as soon as I crossed the finish line, I started throwing up because I was in so much pain. And South Carolina is super flat. So I guess my hips were so used to running a certain way that when I ran on the flat surface, it was just, yeah. So I'm assuming that's why I started feeling it. It could have just been it just degenerated that bad, that it started hurting. And so I got a few opinions prior to having them done, because the most simple one was to kind of shave off the spurs that were growing. But my left hip was so engulfed in the spurs that my leg couldn't go this way, this way, this way, this way. Like I couldn't turn it anyway. So I was good to walk. They said they didn't even know how I was even running 5Ks, that it was that bad. It was super bad, yeah. Because like it would catch and then I wouldn't be able to move, and I didn't understand why. And so they explained it to me and they said, yeah, shaving off is not for you. You need to have a hip replacement. And so I struggled with that mentally. Like I was only 31, 30 when I got the diagnosis. And I was like, yeah, it's not happening. I'm so sorry. Like, I need to go get a second opinion. And a funny story about that. So I saw a doctor here, close to where I live, and he was doing the posterior approach, meaning he would cut it from the back to the front, like it would be like a scar this big, and I wasn't going to do that. Like, there's no way. Like, I'm too young. No, absolutely not. I mean, if I had to, and that was the only option, obviously, but like at this point, they said it is bad, but if it's not hurting too bad when you're walking, you're okay. So I went to another doctor, and funny story about going to see that second orthopedic surgeon is I'm sitting in the room and waiting for the doctor, and he walks in, looks at the chart, and he looks up and he says, "I'm so sorry, wrong room." And he walks out and he said, "Oh my gosh, no, it is the right room. Girl, you have the hips of a 7-year-old grandma." And I looked, "Excuse me?" He said, "I thought you were 70, hence why I walked out, because I saw this young girl sitting in front of me. I didn't know it was you." So he walks back in and he's like, "So I'm interested. What happened?" So just like everybody else is like, "What? What?" And so after that, they were also still doing the posterior, and I kind of walked away from it because it's still mentally, I was still struggling with having my hip replaced. Fast forward, I get pregnant with my son. And the pregnancy itself was very limited. I was in so much pain. I sat up, like I had to sleep sitting up a lot. I had a lot of sciatica pain that was being caused by the hip because it would pinch within. I had a lot of burning down my leg. It just got really, really bad. Everything got inflamed. And as you know, I hope you know, in pregnancy, your hips get like really wide. And so as they were stretching out, that's like how like my walking was super like limited. I was not only pregnancy wobbly, but I was wobbly because of my hips. And so I go to my OB, and my OB says, "I have this diagnosis. I recommend a C-section because it's not safe for me to numb you up. Because would you do an epidural?" I said, yeah. I have a high pain tolerance, and I think that's why I was able to go so long without getting them done. But so that was fast forward maybe 5 years until I had my son. And so he said, "I'm afraid to put you on an epidural because you can't do anything with your legs. They have to go a certain way up. You're not able to do that. You're limited. I'm afraid I'm going to damage something else, because if they push it up, they might pop something might happen. I think your best bet is a C-section. And so mentally, again, like, right, I struggled a lot with mental health there, because, you know, when you think about pregnancy, when you think about giving birth, when you think about becoming a mom, you think about giving birth. And so it took a while for me to accept it. And it just so happens that he was breech, so we had to do it anyway, because he would not turn. He would turn sideways, but he would turn right back up. And they tried to move him. They tried to do everything, and it just was not working. And so yes, it was a lot of pain. But that point, so that was 5 years after my first diagnosis on my left hip. 5 years later, my right hip also got really bad. So now I'm in pain on both sides. So I go through with the C-section. And so now, okay, great, you know, you're no longer pregnant, but now your body's going back to normal. And my body was super angry at me. So I slept in a chair a lot with my son. And I had to sleep on my side because I could not sleep on my back because I had a lot of back pain from all of it. And then later it turns out that because of possibly the improper walking, don't quote me on that because I'm not sure medically, but my disc L3 and L4 are completely it's pinched, the liquid, what is it called? No, they're nope, hold on. I'll think of it. I can't think of it right now. But they're literally almost bone and bone right now. And so like and I think that's what the spine specialist told me too, that's probably because of improper gait for such a long time. Anyway, so I'm in all this pain. I have a newborn. And so we get through postpartum and we get through all the crazies. And I finally healed from my C-section. And I'm in so much pain that I can't even pick my son up. You know, he's like a year old and now he's like, what, I don't know, 20, 30 pounds. And I can't pick him up because I'm in so much pain. I can't pick him up with my legs. And so my husband said, you know, I think it's time for you to seek another opinion. You didn't like this doctor, you didn't like this doctor, you know. And so I happened to speak to one of my nurse friends, and she said her mom, who's like 70-ish at the time, I think, who's got her hip done. And she got it done anterior way, which I've never heard about. And she said, please research it before you go see him. But here's his name. He's like one of the best here in Georgia. And I really want you to go see him and get a second, like a third opinion at this point, but a second opinion, because anterior, your recovery will be much quicker. They don't cut through that many muscles or nerves, or, you know, like there's less damage and like all of that. I said, all right. And so I go see him and he said, we're getting it done. He didn't give me an option. He said, I wouldn't recommend to do both of them at the same time because the recovery would be, but that's up to you, you know. And so finally, he explained to me like what was going to happen, and how he was the one that also helped invent the HANA table, which is he was telling me that he's going around the country, around the world, really teaching other surgeons how to use that table and how to properly do a hip. And so I was like, oh, the HANA table is a table that they do anterior hip replacements on. It's basically a table that looks like this. It's square, and it's got two legs sticking out with a rod in the middle. And so they can, yeah, they can like lift the leg up, they can swing it out to test the hip out. So you can look it up. The HANA table is what it's called. And so they put your legs in boots, and you shouldn't be awake for this, but I guess I was fighting anesthesia and I was awake for it. And like I remember the whole thing, like when they put me on that cold table, and it's just, oh. But I got the first one done. It was June of 2020. And then I got the second one done on my birthday in November of 2020. Yes, so I said I give myself mobility. And they like had the whole surgical room decorated for me for my birthday. But the recovery process of it was just kind of, first one was easy going. It was super quick. I was like, God, this is awesome. Let's get the second one done. The second one hurt. The recovery, the unevenness of it, because your legs are super uneven in the beginning. Yeah. So, yeah. So there's the story. It's just everything was swollen. And until, mhm. I even have a picture of my like knees like this. No, and they tell you that that could be sometimes, but they measure it. And that's why I think the HANA table is very, because they like put them together and they just kind of try to measure the evenness, yeah, the height of them. And so, yeah, the second one was much harder to recover from. And that's how I kind of found Arena Strength, who I tag all the time. They're from Australia, and they've actually helped me recover. Their bands and stuff, because I didn't have any strength in my legs at that point because I was using incorrect gait. Everything I was doing, and they're low impact. So that's how I started with years and years ago. So 5.5 years ago, I started with them, and I mean I've gotten like to the best shape in my life with just arena strength bands and cardio, obviously, but yes, exactly. With a 1 year old. He was one. Holding on to my walker. He was weird, both of them. That's right. My husband calls them aftermarket parts. And I think what bothered me the most mentally was the fact, not that like, oh, I'm old. Later in the beginning, it was a shock, obviously. I'm not old, I'm young. What am I doing? Like, this is crazy. But once the pain started setting in more and more, I think my problem with it was they're taking something of mine and I'm never going to have my hips again. They're cutting my hip off. They're cutting my bone off. I will never have my own hip again. And so like mentally, like it's crazy to talk about. Like now when I hear myself, I'm like, but it wasn't functional. So what do you need it for? It wasn't functional. Like I couldn't even cross my legs. As I'm crossing my legs right now, I couldn't cross my legs. That's how bad my hips were. So yeah. So I understand. Right, exactly. No, no, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's the denial of it. I'm fine. It's fine. You cut it off. It's fine. Then I'm not gonna have it anyway. So like, so yeah, I think to me, at the end of the day, the pain trumped the feeling of it's not my part anymore. Yeah, no. Can I show you? So when I'm at the beach, usually people go, "What happened?" Because it like looks like a Zorro. You know Zorro? Like I'm that old. Okay, Zorro. Okay. So it looks like a Zorro like started doing the Z, but then didn't finish it, right? So there's one right there. See, that's the posterior. That's what I was trying to avoid. This is the anterior. So that's why. Oh, it wasn't neat when I took the bandage off. I had my husband take it off and I looked down at it and I almost passed out. It was gnarly. Like it looked like somebody took a butter knife and sliced it open like that because it was like, but it healed like perfect. Yeah. What have I done? Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, maybe it had a lot to do with just I think just the blues. But I did have it was bad with my son, with my second baby. No, that yes, gosh, I would sit myself down and just give myself the pep talk of, um, our body parts are only good to us as long as they work. If they're not working, they're no good to us anymore. So why hang on to them? Just like hanging on to past traumas, right? Like why do you hang on to past traumas or grudges or they're no longer serving a purpose. So why hang on to them? They're no longer needed. So get new ones, get a new perspective, get a new hip. You know what? Get a new kidney if you need it. Like get a new. It's okay to start something new because it's opening up. It's opening up a whole different. I guess what's the word that I'm looking for? Um, Life, yeah, it's opening up life and mobility. It's opening up the fact that I can run around with my son and not like, oh, like it hurts. Mommy can't do that. I do everything with him now. I jump in a bouncy house. Like stuff that I couldn't do anymore. I remember the word bulging discs. They're bulging. Bulging discs. Yeah. So L3 and L4. Mm-hmm. Because it messes with your spine. Yeah. It's like Legos that you're missing parts. Yeah. So with me, what my surgeon pointed out, was he took a video of me walking away from him. And he said, "You're dragging one of your legs." So I'm walking like this. Um, and then he said, "Flex your legs for me. Let me see your thighs." And so my left thigh, which I wasn't using much, literally had so much muscle loss from not using correct gait, from not walking appropriately. And my right one was like all beefed up, right? Which isn't normal. So he said, if anything, there's going to be so much muscle loss and you're going to cause more damage by waiting than if you just go ahead and get it now and fix your gait and, work those muscles and bring them back. So it does, it changes it all. And I don't know about you, like if your walking has corrected itself, but it changes everything. The way you bend over and tie your shoes, because my husband had to tie my shoes, or I had to sit down and like I couldn't even pick my leg up like that. It would come up to here because it's just my mobility. I was taking away my own mobility by not doing the surgery in the first place. Just one more funny story. When I was getting my C-section with my second child, and they laid me out on the table and, they numbed me up, and the surgical assistant comes up and she goes, there's literally a line right here. So I had already a C-section. So I'm having another C-section and 2 hip replacements. So she's like, so you remember I was telling you the Zorro sign. So the Z started. I was like, Zorro came, but he never finished the job. And she laughed. And I mean, there's like some areas in my legs that I can't feel. They're still numb. And like when my son or my daughter would like touch that area, it's like, or when it itches and you can't scratch it. Yes. And my legs too, because it's still like kind of numb in the side. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I fell. We were playing Duck Duck Goose in the beginning of the year. And I swore I dislocated my hip because I fell trying to protect my son. I was moving him away and I went, yes. So I like pulled him away and I hit my knee and I was like, I either broke my knee, broke my toe, or I dislocated my hip because I was screaming. It hurt so bad. But everything was fine. The knee was purple. I mean, all the way like from my shin all the way up to my femur. It was purple all around it. But it's fine. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you on Instagram. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Yep. Hmm. Yeah, people do them differently now. Yep. Well, I asked them to make like a hip replacement, an exercise because they have pregnancy, they have knee safe, they don't have a hip safe. And I was like, I'll help you guys. Just let's make one. Like I'm not asking for anything. Yep. Yep. I've tried. I have my own link, but I have to get in touch with the right people, I think. So see that. My husband asked for my hip when they cut it. He said, I want to make a cane for her. I want to make a cane for her because how perfect would that be? Like, but they didn't let him have it. That would be awesome. You too. And I'm sorry it took so long for us to meet.